Thank you guys for joining me back here at Wednesday Night Bible Class. I hope that you are learning. I hope that you are enjoying these classes and these presentations. I am. I'm having a great time. I'm learning a lot. I am learning how to research and I'm looking at things that I've never even thought to look at. So I hope that the same goes for you, and I hope that you will continue on this journey with me as we look at the ancient Israelites and we go through the Bible from the Old Testament to the New Testament, with a stop in between after the Old Testament when we look at Judaism, and then we go to the New Testament. I'm excited about Judaism, but then again, I'm excited about all of this. So thank you guys for being here with me and continuing with me. I am excited about tonight's class because we're going to look at some topics in Exodus. Of course, we already talked about the fact that when we look at these videos, and the one we're looking at in particular about the ancient Israelites, Dr. Chapman can't cover everything in all the books. So what we're going to do is, in between, we're going to go do our own study and then come back and talk about what we've learned. So the reason why I'm excited about this study in Exodus is because, first of all, we're going to look at the angel of the Lord again. So yes, he shows up again, and we're going to look at that. And then secondly, the story that kind of spoke to me is the story of Moses and the 10 plagues, but not in the way that most teachers and ministers teach about this story. This story spoke to me in a different way because of my own journey, and I will explain that to you as we go along. So let's go. Let's get right at it. So anybody who knows me knows that I am shy, kinda, and I don't like all eyes on me. I don't like speaking to public. The people who know me know what I do for a living, and I always tell them that that's different. Doing your job is doing your job, but maybe not so different. But so I don't like public presentation. I don't like speaking in front of people. I'm shy. I feel I'm an introvert. And so it always makes me feel uncomfortable. And so being an introvert and being shy and not wanting to speak publicly in front of people, I found camaraderie, I guess, with Moses and his journey, because he didn't want to talk to anybody either. So I felt a sort of camaraderie with him in that, and so that's what we're going to look at. And as we look at it, you will find that Moses started out, I don't want to talk to Pharaoh, I can't talk, I'm not eloquent. But he actually ends up doing a lot of the talking, and then most of the talking at the end. So that fascinates me. So let's go ahead and get into that, and we're going to start in Genesis chapter 3. I'm going to read in Genesis chapter 3, verses 10 and 12. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to, this is God talking. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? I get that. I get it. And he said, certainly, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you, that it is I who have sent you. Even when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Now, it goes further into Moses asking God, when I go to them, who am I going to tell them sent me? And this is where God gives Moses his name. That is an amazing story in and of itself. But we're going to skip that for now and get back to Moses and his timidness and his shyness and his introvertedness, and how God helps him push past that. We move to chapter 4, where we have a bunch of instances where Moses is like, nobody's going to listen to me. I'm not eloquent. Nobody's going to believe what I say, okay? So we're going to look at a few verses in chapter 4. Chapter 4, verses 1. Then Moses said, what if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you. Excuses, or I can't really call them excuses. So there's the first one in chapter 4. What if they won't hear me? What if they won't believe me? Then we go over to verse 10. Then Moses said to the Lord, please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. And then we have the Lord combating that with, didn't I make your tongue? I got this, right? But then Moses in verse 13, but he said, please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will. Not me, send it by somebody else. So then the anger of the Lord burns against Moses, but he is going to work with Moses, and he sends Moses Aaron, who is to be the mouthpiece. So God is going to speak to Moses, Moses is going to speak to Aaron. Aaron is going to speak to Pharaoh. Or so we thought. We go to verse 14. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, "Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently, and moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart." Okay, so that's the setup, or the purported setup, but let's see how it actually goes, right? We come to chapter 5, and we're going to take this from verse 1 through 3, where Aaron and Moses first show up to Pharaoh. "And afterward, Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh and said to him, 'Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go that they may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness.' But Pharaoh said, 'Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and besides, I will not let Israel go.' Then they said, 'The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Otherwise he will fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword.'" Then they said, one could argue, well, it's just saying they because it's just saying they. Well, this is how I feel about that. If it says they, it means they. But then also, if we go to verse 23 reads, "Then Moses returned to the Lord. 'O Lord, why have you brought harm to these people? Why did you ever send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done harm to this people.'" Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name. To me, that suggests that he's saying that he is speaking. Then we come to chapter 6, where Moses is getting ready to speak to the people. But if you remember, if you go back to chapter 4, he didn't even want to speak to the people. He's like, what if they don't believe me? So let's look at chapter 6, verses 6, where God is telling Moses what to say to Israel. "Say therefore to the sons of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from their bondage. I will also redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments." Okay. Then you go to verse 9. "So Moses spoke thus to the sons of Israel." Now, they didn't listen to him, but he spoke it. Whereas he was protesting before. There's not much of a protest here. I don't see a protest here between the time when God told him to do this and when he did it. But this encounter actually gave Moses kind of an excuse, right? So as we move along, so then after he talks to the sons of Israel and they didn't believe him, God tells Moses to go tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, in verse 11, to let the sons of Israel go out of his hand. But Moses spoke, here's the excuse. But Moses spoke before the Lord, saying, "Behold, the sons of Israel have not listened to me. How then will Pharaoh listen to me? For I am unskilled in speech." So he does pretty good from Genesis from Exodus 6, where God tells him to go talk to the sons of Israel. I don't see any excuses. He just goes. In verse 9, he goes and he says what God told him to say. But then they didn't listen, and now he has a reason to not want to go to Pharaoh. That's familiar. That's familiar. Moses reiterates this at the end of chapter 6 in verse 28. Now, verse 28 through 30. "Now it came about on the day when the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 'I am the Lord, speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, all that I speak to you.' But Moses said before the Lord, 'Behold, I am unskilled in speech. How then will Pharaoh listen to me?'" So he's continuing this excuse after the sons of Israel didn't listen to him, okay? But God is working with Moses. So as we see in chapter 7, verses 1 and 2, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'See, I make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. So you shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall speak to Pharaoh, that he let the sons of Israel go out of his land.'" So I love how God is working with Moses, who keeps coming up with these excuses, okay? So God is working with Moses, and he's also working with God. He's really trying. As we move through chapter 7, if we come down to verses 9, or let's start at verses 8. "Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, 'When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, work a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent.' So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and they did just as the Lord has commanded." So God is working with Moses. Moses is going to speak to Aaron. Aaron is going to speak to Pharaoh. We see more of that. So, and Moses is also working with God. So he's like, okay, to get my, I can do that. That I can do. That I feel comfortable doing. So they do that. That just resonates with me so much, because I know there are so many times when God was like, I need you to do this, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, but I can do this. And he has worked with me and got me to a place where I am finally doing what I believe that he's been trying to get me to do for a long time. So this resonates with me. There's more of this Moses working with God, God working with Moses as we move through chapter 7. If you look at verses 16 through 20, you see God telling Moses what to say to Aaron, what Aaron is to say to Pharaoh. And then like in verse 20, so Moses and Aaron did even as the Lord had commanded. So they're doing what God is telling them to do in the working with you stage, right? We see a lot of this, God working with Moses and Moses working with God from chapters 7, and then we get up to chapter 11 where the last plague takes place, okay? So let's look at chapter 11. I'm going to go through chapter 11 verses 1 through 4 pretty quickly and just paraphrase and summarize. Now the Lord said to Moses, one more plague I will bring on Pharaoh and on Egypt, and after that he will let you go. When he lets you go, he will drive you out from here completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people, that each man ask from his neighbor and each woman from her neighbor for articles of silver and articles of gold. The Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Furthermore, Moses was greatly esteemed in the land, both in the sight of Pharaoh and of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. So during this time where God has been working with Moses and Moses has been working with God, he's earning favor in the sight of the people. And I wonder if this is part of why he feels comfortable to now just speak freely. Because in verses 4 through 8, he's speaking the longest. Like this is the most he's spoken at one time during this whole process. So it took 11 chapters and 10 plagues for him to get to this point, but he gets to this point. Verse 4, Moses said, thus said the Lord, about midnight I am going to go into all of the midst of Egypt. And now he's talking about what's going to happen to the firstborns. This goes on from verse 4 to verse 8. He's finally speaking the way God asked him to speak. Isn't there something in your life that you know God is telling you to do, or he wants you to do, and I don't know, you're an introvert and shy like me, so you're not doing it. You come up with excuses for not doing it, but God is willing to work with you like he's worked with me over these years, and I'm finally doing what he wanted me to do a long time ago. Does that resonate with anybody? That speaks to me. As a recap, we have Moses being asked by God to go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to let his people go. Moses is also supposed to go to the children of Israel and say some things to them. We have Moses making excuses in the beginning. He's not eloquent. How are they going to believe me? Who am I going to say sent me? And God is working with Moses through his, I will call, introvertism. God is working with Moses through his ism, as he does with all of us. And you end up seeing Moses on the other side, not making any excuses, just speaking. Yeah. The next thing that excites me about this is the angel of the Lord appears in Exodus. So let's go look at all the places where the angel of the Lord is appearing in Exodus. So what am I going to do? Everybody should have one of these by now. Let's go look up angel. Remember how the concordance works, where it gives you the word and it gives you all of the chapter and verses where this word is found, and it goes in chronological order. So since we're in Exodus, all of the Exodus verses should be right at the beginning. So I'm at angel, and there's about 6 places where the phrase the angel of the Lord or the angel of God appears. So that excites me. So let's go look at these. The first one, of course, being Exodus chapter 3, where Moses meets the burning bush. Let's take a look at that. Now Moses was pasturing in the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Some people call that Horeb, some people call this Sinai. Verse 2. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. He said also, okay, so verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. When the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called to him from the midst of the bush. The angel was in the bush. Now God is calling to him from the bush. Verse 5, take off your sandals, this is holy ground. Verse 6, he said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The angel was in the bush. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a bush. Then God called to him from the bush. Then he told Moses, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. The next time the angel of the Lord appears in Exodus is Exodus chapter 14, verse 19. This is when Pharaoh was in pursuit, and this is when the sea is divided. We go to verse 19. Let's start at verse 18. Then the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I am honored through Pharaoh, through his chariots and his horsemen. The angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So the angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. And remember, we're going to dedicate an entire study on the angel of the Lord / the angel of God. It's just that as we move through the Old Testament and we see him come up, let's just point him out. And then we'll do an entire study dedicated just to him. As we move through Exodus, we come to Exodus chapter 23. And chapter 23, the verses that we're going to look at are going to describe sort of the conquest of the land. So let's look at verse 20. This is God speaking. Behold, I am going to send an angel before you to guard you along the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Be on your guard before him and obey his voice. Do not be rebellious towards him, for he will not pardon your transgression, since my name is in him. Okay, time out. Be on your guard before him and obey his voice. Do not be rebellious towards him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, which means don't rebel against him or he won't forgive your transgressions. Since my name is in him, don't be rebellious towards him or he won't pardon your transgressions, since my name is in him. Y'all. Verse 22. But if you truly obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. 23. For my angel will go before you, just like he did in chapter 14, verse 19. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the land of the Amorites and all the ites, and you will completely destroy them. I don't recall learning about angels or hearing about angels and having to obey them. I don't recall hearing about angels and them being even able to forgive any transgressions. And I don't recall very many angels where God is saying, my name is in him. The other two places where the angel of the Lord is mentioned is in chapter 32, verse 34, and chapter 33, verse 2. So let's take a look at those. In chapter 32, Moses is upset with the people because they've made this calf and they're worshiping this calf and they're dancing with it. Let's start at verse 31. Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, Alas, this people has committed a great sin and they have made a god of gold for themselves. But now, if you will, forgive their sin, and if not, please blot me out from your book which you have written. Just dramatic. Just dramatic. The Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book. Verse 34. But go now, lead the people where I told you. Behold, my angel shall go before you, just like in chapter 14 and in chapter 23. Nevertheless, in the day when I punish, I will punish them for their sin. Come down to chapter 33, verse 2. The journey has resumed. God is saying to Moses, I will send an angel before you, just like in chapter 14, chapter 23, chapter 32. And I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, and all the other ites. Y'all, who is this angel of the Lord? That's so interesting. Who is the angel of the Lord? Cannot wait until we do that study. So that was another fascinating in between Wednesday night Bible class, and I want to thank you guys for joining me on this journey. I hope that you're learning something, and I hope that you're having fun. I am having fun with this study and learning everything that we are learning. So if you found this enjoyable, if you're learning something, please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. If you know someone who may be interested in doing a study like the one that we're doing, please bring them on board. The more the merrier. And I will see you guys in the next class. Bye.